Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Haynes. I'm an audiobook narrator, and this is part of what I call the Process Project, where this is the first video where I'm not the one who's been doing the narration. I am talking with my friend Julia Bernetta Simpson, who is guest narrating a piece of nonfiction that is very unusual, but like a lot of unusual things, serves a specific niche. Julia, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Julia, let's talk a little bit about this project that you have been working on based on the sample that I gave you. I gave you a sample. I was like, "Hey, Julia, give this a try, and let's talk about your process of working a piece of text like this."
Okay. Well, the first thing I always do is just read it and read it several times. And with a piece that is nonfiction is usually first person, and just to sort of get the feel for the author. I also like to do a little research on the author if I can to see if there is interviews out there so that I can hear them speak or sort of their mannerisms and their perspective. And so I did see a little clip of our author today, and I had found sort of a little bit of a little humor. That's the word I'm looking for
Hmm.
in the piece. And when I saw our author, I sort of got that from her, that a little joy, a little twinkle. So I like to, when I'm doing first person and speaking as the author's, trying to put myself in their shoes to speak as the authority on the subject. And I found the piece actually very easy to read, to
Hmm.
understand her process that she was sharing in the sample. I thought so. I hope I didn't miss anything, but I really enjoyed working on it. And I also like when I'm working on nonfiction, especially the same as with historical fiction. I like to learn something, and
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I really learned something in the piece as well.
Well, and isn't that lovely to have that win-win where we're being enriched by something that we are earning a living using to enrich others. I mean, to me, that's just the bliss of doing this job.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell the folks what exactly this book is.
Well, this book is it's about the writing process, and specifically of coming up with character names in books, and how different authors approach it, and specifically how this author approaches going about uh, finding names to fit characters.
Hmm.
And I didn't get to read the entire book, but from the little clip, like I said, I felt like I did learn that some authors, they just do it after the fact, but she came at it. She has to know the character's name. I think I would have to know the character's name too. That
Mm.
feeds who the writing and who the actual characters are. I don't know how you give them XXX and then find out who they are and what their names are later. But every author has a different process. So
Yeah. You know,
whatever works for you.
what you're talking about reminds me of like, some parents, name the baby after it's been out of the womb for a while and they get to know it,
It's true.
but yeah, starting with a character name to me makes quite a bit of sense. And also it sort of sets a thesis for that character. Um
Yes.
and such. Um
I did
and
love the
yeah.
fact too when she said that she often didn't, her hero in one of her books, I guess she didn't really know what he looked like for a while. And
Hmm.
then when she discovered that, she was like, "Ooh, I do like a handsome hero." I
Ah,
I think that was my favorite line.
it's like the casting process in that sense then, isn't it?
Yeah. You're not quite sure what you're gonna get until you find it.
When you narrate, do you find that there are different methods that you use in the act of narration that differ from genre to genre. For example, if I'm narrating romance and I'm narrating a love scene in a romance, usually what I'll focus on is sort of when the tension is rising and when it's relaxing, when it's rising and when it's relaxing. However, if I'm working on a piece that has espionage in it and there's an action sequence, then I will focus on how things are going, and then where the surprise is, going, where the surprise is. If it's nonfiction and instructional, I'll highlight the areas that are the really needing to be broken down. I'll even make separate paragraphs out of a sentence and just like
Mhm.
really, really outline for the listener. How do you contrast the work that you did on Brenda's piece by any other name? That's the book that we're talking about, and other books that you've done.
Well, I think it sounds like we have a similar process. You go through, I sort of find that as I read it through a few times, sometimes you find that natural rhythm, the pace of the piece. And when there is intensity or suspense, the writing itself, when it's good writing, it's written in there, and the pauses are there. The the mystery, and you kind of know when to back off, and then when it gets intense you can speed up. Your pace changes, different characters speak depending on who they are and what the situation is. Some characters will naturally speak a lot faster. I just find all of that, but I think most of the time when it's really good writing, it's in there, and sometimes you have to pull it apart and just so you can figure out where you're going to breathe and things like that. But the pacing I find is very important, and it varies from genre to genre for sure.
Mm-hmm. Um, with when you're working with a character's text, whether you're doing well, actually, let's because I was about to mention some of the types of performing that you do within audiobooks and outside of audiobooks. Give us a little bit of backstory in terms of you as a performer.
Okay, well, my mother said I got here performing. Singing and acting. I grew up in North Carolina, and I was performing and singing in the church choir, and then really in plays throughout school, and got serious about theater in high school. I went to Syracuse University, and I was a musical theater major, and studied while I was there also in London, which was a fantastic experience. And then right to New York, and touring, and large companies, big and small, little vans, all kinds of experiences all around the country. And but just great training around fabulous, worked with fabulous people, really grew up on the road, and met some of my dearest friends to this day, people that I toured with in those early days. And then I did that, all kinds of shows, mostly theater, just a little bit of TV and film things interspersed, but live theater. Uh, and then I became a mom, and I have a daughter and son and husband, and we moved outside of New York City. I live in New Rochelle, and while my kids were young, I had started developing my own one woman shows and things because I knew I didn't want to miss anything with them. And then I would do things in the school, like after school programs, teaching acting and public speaking and movement and music. So then when my kids grew up, and then I really seriously started producing my own one woman shows, concerts, and CDs,
Hmm.
and then the pandemic hit, and along the way I was thinking about, I'd heard about audiobooks and thought that might be a good fit, and then the world shut down, and so I started to really investigate and just explore and see what I could do with this audiobook narrating, and I found such a wonderful community. And so now I'm in it and really enjoying it, and starting to meet a lot of wonderful people, and I'm looking to hopefully be in it for a long time.
What do you find are the similarities between some of the the muscles that you've developed as an in-person performer and what you're now doing with audiobook narration?
Well, I think, when you're developing the character, you always take it back to the text, and you have to find out who, the time period, the place, the time, who the person is, the person's backstories, where they are in the play or the book, and where did they come from, how did their experiences before influence where they are now, where they're going. So the whole through line, just developing a well-rounded character. And then I find that the voices, the people, it comes out of that. I mean, when you're dealing with a musical or play, you've got to, it's set. But I think there's more freedom, and there certainly is more that a narrator is responsible for when you're creating all of the characters versus, your one character, or even if you're understudying a couple of other people and you have your main. When you're doing audiobook narration, you just full range. You're responsible for all of it for the most part, unless you're in a multicast or dual narration. So I think, it's all work, that's for sure. But there is a freedom, I think, to what you can do as a narrator. You can bring a lot more to the different characters, and you have an opportunity to develop a lot of different voices sometimes, and totally opposite people, versus when you're doing a play or a film or TV, when you just have your one character.
Yeah. I think I heard somebody describe doing audiobooks as like the ultimate one-person show.
Yes, there you go. There you go.
Do you find that with nonfiction pieces like this one, that you are taking on a character as the narrator, not necessarily in a fake way, but just in terms of like what your particular role is, and the imaginary audience of one that you're narrating to, or the group of people you're narrating, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I do think that the narrator is a character in itself, and I always do decide who I'm talking to, who I'm speaking to, just so that a lot of times I find with nonfiction, it can get a little teachy or preachy, and as opposed to having a conversation or sharing. So when you come at it from that perspective, but when you just try to put yourself in the head of the author of nonfiction, and they're speaking as an expert on that subject, I find it easy a lot of the times to slip into that, and as I say, you're learning as you go. And if you do your prep work and your investigation, by the time you're ready to actually start narrating and sharing the piece, you really do come to it with some authority.
Cool. Yes. Yeah, and that's something that's very, very difficult to fake.
That's true. That's very true.
Let everybody, we're going to go to a clip of the text of By Any Other Name. You'll be hearing the recording of Julia's work, and enjoy.
Introduction. If you write science fiction or fantasy, you are constantly wrestling with the issue of names. Everything needs a name, and most of the time, you can't just borrow the ones in your daily life. People who wield elven swords are not usually named Larry or Mark. They very often live in places that need to sound more exotic than Boca Raton or Seattle. I've written a number of short essays addressing this problem. These appeared over the years as blog posts on Bookview Cafe, and for years I've been handing out the links to writers who ask for help in naming people, places, or things in their works. This compilation should make life easier for all of us, because now they're all here, in one place and one book. They have been somewhat edited and improved here and there. Part 1. Tell me your name. You write a novel. Naturally, it has characters, and those characters need names. Let us set aside for some other day the issue of creating fantasy names, and consider today only naming characters with cognomens that already exist. Depending upon how you roll, this may come very early in the writing process. In his Elements of Fiction Writing, Characters and Viewpoint, Orson Scott Card mentions a friend who gives his characters dummy names, XXX or YYY. Only when he's nearly finished writing does he decide on names and replace the XXX with Charles or Diego or whatever. Card adds that he himself couldn't write that way. It wouldn't work for me either. For me, the name comes before beginning the writing at all. If I don't know the character's name, I can't get any traction. I can get away without looking at my hero for many thousands of words. I was more than halfway through the first draft of How Like a God before I thought to actually cast the authorial gaze upon my hero. I knew what all the other characters looked like because I was using his viewpoint, but he had never done the old look in the mirror stunt. When I did look, I was astonished and marked the place in the text. I do like a handsome hero. To find a true name is a powerful magic wielded by wizards in fantasy novels, and it's one of the core competencies of the writer. But there are a number of factors to consider. The most important, of course, is time and place. A work that takes place on Mars in AD 2502 is going to have a differently named cast than a work that is set in 1741 in Wales. Given names especially come and go in fashion in an easily charted way. You can search on it and kick up sites that will graph for you the popularity of, say, John as a name for boys over the centuries. Certain names are highly redolent of their era. Consider my own. Every Brenda you are ever likely to meet is between 60 and 80, because that was when that given name was in fashion. Nearly all Lindas are the same, whereas a Madison was surely born the year after Splash and is around 40 years old today. You, therefore, are foolish indeed to name your Elizabethan heroine Brenda or Madison. And if the novel is set in ancient Rome, all I can say is, for God's sake, don't. Rome, like many other cultures, had its own naming conventions which you should research carefully. Consult, if you can, actual historical documents of the period. Books, newspapers, blog posts. Do not rely upon modern interpretations like movies, TV shows, or novels written after the period.
And if you'd like more information on that book, it's going to be in the description of the video. Julia, how can people find you?
People can find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter X. I'm not a huge social media person, so the best way to find me is to go to my website, which is www.brenettaproductions.com, and that's BREANETTA productions.com. And also for my narrating work, you can go to my other website, which is juliabsimpson.com, and I have an audiobooks page there.
All right. Julia, thank you so much for your time and for your contribution to, an art form that to me is all about just pushing the world forward in terms of communicating, sharing, and reminding each other of just how lively life can be. I'm Matt Haynes, and as your narrators, Julie and I, we hope that our voices and your ears meet again real soon.